History in the age of shamelessness. For centuries now, people have been appealing to the past to justify the present, reconstructing, rereading the past for the sake of showing that we are right, finding validation in the past for our own views, our own prejudices even. To what extent can we escape this today? Should we escape it? Do we still need to appeal to the past in order to affirm our own sense of certainty? Modern man does this until the 1930s. We have a parenthesis where we no longer need to do this. And then we get back to business after Second World War. Let us see why this is the case. With the rise of the Nazi movement, we have the self-destruction of modern rationalism, and so the whole project of looking at the past as fuel for the present task of facing the future. The Nazi movement represents this self-destruction of modern reason. What happens here? What happens is that we can just affirm our bare, raw will to power rather than have to justify our will to power with reference to the ancients. We don't need a genealogy. We can scrap it. We don't need to reason about the historical context, the genesis of our present. Our present is here. That's good enough for us. Who cares where we come from? The important thing is that we're here to affirm our own will. The triumph of the will is on the table. We have unmasked the apparatus of modern reason. We have exposed its underlying will. The will to self-justification, the will to affirm. Affirm what? The will affirms itself. Freedom. The Nazi movement stood for freedom, absolute freedom. No need to justify it. Freedom justifies itself. The will triumphs as an autonomous reality that defines its own destiny. It is one with destiny. It is fated by the absence of a God. The very absence of God fates, destines us to establish a new world. A new world grounded in the autonomy of a free, enlightened will that no longer needs to hide behind justifications. Again, doesn't need to justify itself by appealing to something beyond itself. So this is where we stand today. Again, after the Second World War, obviously that didn't go very well, and yet it did. It did in the respect that the project of the affirmation of the will was carried on a grander scale, on a global scale, thereby realizing the Nazi project beyond parochial experiments. What we have today, of course, is a neo-Nazi regime, which is the globalist regime, which, of course, heralds science, technology, or science as technology, as the Redeemer. The machine is the new God. This machine is a manifestation, and ultimately is the thing itself, but it's a manifestation of the will to power. It is itself the will to power. It no longer needs to appeal to the past. The past is something that happened. We can play with the past. We can amuse ourselves, entertain ourselves. It's fun. We already know where it's going. It's going into the machine, the global open society. That is the context, ultimately, of the past. Right. The context is the historical consciousness that is proper to our global age. There is no past aside from the rise of the modern technological society. We take this for granted, absolutely for granted. There's no question. That is a fact, we say, right? An indisputable fact. Only a madman would question the ineluctability of the rise of the present. That is the whole point. The present means the open society beyond the prejudices of the past. This is the context. The context is what we incarnate today. In earlier centuries, still in the modern world, or at the dawn of the modern world, modern ideologues could not yet do what we do. Because as they were planning the rise of a modern world, they did not yet have access to it in the concrete. They had blueprints, but they did not have the sense of certainty, the self-certainty, widespread sense of certainty that we have today. They still had to deal with the closed societies as authoritative, the prejudices of the closed societies. So we have Machiavelli, for instance, who looks at the past and he tries to reconstruct it to justify his blueprint, not to justify a world that is already there, what Shakespeare will call Brave New World, satirically. So, do we still need history? Well, for Machiavelli it was essential because he needed to justify his blueprint. The blueprint was free-floating. His appeal to new modes, new orders, they're all new. Today, we don't only have the new modes and new orders, we have the actual self-realization, as it were, of realization of these blueprints, right, from the early modern world. So they have gained authority today. We don't need the authority of the past to justify the present. The present justifies itself. We live in an age of shamelessness. What does that mean, shamelessness? Why shamelessness? Because we don't need a sense of shame. Very simple. The past needed a sense of shame because it recognized its own inadequacy. It couldn't stand on its own. So it needed a god. It needed to appeal to something beyond itself. Today we don't need to appeal to something beyond ourselves. We are autonomous of any standard beyond our own doing. We're emancipated. We're autonomous. We're enlightened. We do not need a sense of shame. We're without shame, and so we're shameless. At any rate, we have no way of telling what the difference might be between the two. Free from terrible shame, bad shame, and being shameless. The standard is our own society of rules and regulations, the mechanistic universe we are building, we are consolidating, we are participating in. As enlightened egos, enlightened selves, who no longer need to appeal to an external source of authority. This is technocracy. That's why we do no longer need to appeal to history. Again, history is amusing, history is entertainment, but we don't need to appeal to the past. The past is inferior, is to be, at any rate, understood in the context of the present. And for Machiavelli, it was to be understood in the context of something greater than his age. This is important. For us, it is to be understood in the context of our age. In that respect, since our age realizes the modern Machiavellian project, we're at the end of that ascent, right, to the realization of that project, which is what Hegel, for instance, will call history. At the end of history, we no longer need to justify ourselves by appealing to the authority of the past. And how does Machiavelli appeal to that authority? By modifying it, to make space for the ascent to the present or to the future. He modifies the past. He has to go to the ancient historians, Livius, most notably, modifying it, reconstructing it, so that he can vouch for, justify his project. Project of establishing a new world that is autonomous of all the prejudices of the past. He says, well, Livius tried to do that, but he wasn't successful at it. I can do it. I'm scientific, so we can get rid of the prejudices that Livius might have had. Livius is a proto-Machiavellian for Machiavelli. So the past tried to do what we're doing, but they failed. Yeah. But we can do it. We're scientific. So we look at the past, we fix it, fix the past historians. We have a new method. We'll establish a new world. The new world will no longer need the past. It will no longer need the past. It will be totally autonomous. It will look at the past. It's an amusing thing. Today, we don't need to appeal to the past to justify ourselves. If you look at, for example, all of these internet, all this internet news about the latest discovery of whatever it is from the past, right? Prehistorical, whatnot, Roman period, Greeks, Middle Ages, Renaissance, all of these rereadings that they're giving, that they're dishing out, popularized, supported by the regime. All of these rereadings, reconstructions, are composed under the assumption that it's game over. We're just looking at, oh, look, you see, the past, what do you know, was an attempt to get to the present. And the present, again, is its own justification. Even if we didn't have that past, it wouldn't matter, because we're already shameless. We no longer appeal to an authority beyond our age, beyond the machine that defines our age, beyond the technocracy, beyond the rules and regulations, the laws. It's okay. We're just doing it to entertain ourselves. Why do we read the news about the stars, the black holes, the quasars, all this stuff in the universe that they're coming up with, the strings, the chaos, the novas, and so forth? Why? To justify our way of life? No. To entertain ourselves. To say, oh, well, that's cute. Obviously we're right. Obviously we're autonomous. But this just goes to show that how much we're right. We don't really need it, but it embellishes our situation. Our will to power would be boring without it seeking an image of itself everywhere. We would be bored. So we need entertainment. We need to look everywhere for signs of ourselves, images of our own divinity. We are absolute. We don't have to say it. We imply it in everything we do. We live in an age of shamelessness, and we don't really need history. We're just pretending. We're pretending to need it. We're amused by it. We're entertaining ourselves. We're nominalists in technical terms, which is to say that words are cash. They don't really mean anything. They just, they're a reflection of our will to power. Our will as power itself.